Oar wrapping is a lot different than painting because you're going to take an oar, as you can see, painted already, and what you're going to do is take one of these things, and this is part of a wrap, and you're going to put on. It smells pretty good. And so I'm going to put this on the oar. This is going to go, this is going to go on here like that. And if it sticks, we're great. If it doesn't stick, get a mess. I think it's going to stick. So before we get going, we need stuff. We always need stuff in this sport. So rubbing alcohol, or just plain alcohol, it doesn't have to be rubbing in this case. Isopropyl alcohol. Need that. And we need gloves because we have oil and junk all over our hands. So we need gloves. These are the latex. If you have an issue with latex, you get non-latex gloves. Purple, lovely color. And need a heat gun. Not plugged in, so I need an extension cord, but you need a heat gun. This is a pretty nice little heat gun. I don't know who it's made by. I've had it for years. Works pretty well. It gets pretty hot. Not to be used on hair. Speaking of, I don't think a hairdryer will get hot enough. So if you have, or if you can, beg, borrow, steal a heat gun. And we've got some other things here. Need an X-Acto knife. Really sharp. Helps with the trimming. Super sharp. And as you can see, really sharp. Not something for the faint of heart to use. And then we also have, let's see, I have a different knife to use, not as sharp, like the X-Acto better. So first things first, wearing the gloves. The reason I'm wearing the gloves is not to protect me from any nasty stuff. It's to, because we all have our oil on our hands, is to keep the oil off. And the next step, use the isopropyl alcohol, and I'm going to use this to clean the blade. I'm not removing the old paint or any decals that are on there. I'm just getting rid of anything that's on the surface that would keep the adhesive from making a good bond. And doing the edges too. Because this color is so vibrant, this red, our color is different, I'm going to have the wrap go around the edges. You don't necessarily need to do that, but in this case I think it's something we need to do. So clean oar, there we go. So you're going to have 3 decals, that's what I call them, wraps. The first one is this small one. The small one goes over the loom where the shaft runs into the spoon. The second one, or third one, or fourth one, no, it's not fourth. The second one goes on the back side. And you can see this is where the loom goes, and this here, the first one I just showed you, will go there. Okay? And then the last one, or the first one, whatever, this is for the front of the blade. Okay? So we have 3 different decals, and they all go together to form one nice wrap. All right, so I've got this decal pretty much on, as you can see. There are a couple little places, little bubbles, that I'm going to try to press down with a squeegee. At the same time, I'm going to be using the heat gun to warm this up, I'll actually make it pretty hot, and then I can also get those bubbles out a little bit. So that's an interesting part of the process. But you can see I've still got extras on the lips, around the corners or edges of the blade, and that's fine and dandy. So now to the heat gun and the squeegee. If you're using a heat gun, be careful. They get really, really hot. So there I have that. Now what I'm going to do is pull the lips over on the edges. All I'm doing here is just rolling it over. I'm not pulling it because I'll stretch the material. I'm going to leave this end up for a little bit. And it's okay if it's not all the way over. Now if this blade, if this was the same color as the decal, I might not even wrap it around the edges. I might leave that without the decal on it, trim the decal off. But in this case, I am over because the red is so vibrant compared to the green. So we've got that on. And now down. When I put the back one on, it will come over on top. So the lips will actually have 2 coats of the decal on it, which I think is not a bad idea. All right, now, kind of see where we are there. Now I'm going to do the same up here. Just rolling the front over. There I'm pulling just a little bit just to get that bump out. And you'll notice a little crease there. I will trim that and that one off, but not right now. I'm not in the trim phase of it right now. Now down here, this is where it gets a little bit tricky because we have a lot of turns and corners here, but I want to get this part down very, very solid here. And what I'm going to do is take my knife and just put a slit here so I can wrap that under without that being such a big issue. So I'm taking the X-Acto top off. So as you can see here and here, that's settled down. Still a little bit of an issue right there. Now this will be doubled over. And if that's not going to settle down a little bit, I can also trim that off because it will be doubled over. You can see the surface of the blade looks pretty good. And right here, pretty good. A couple little wrinkles. I'll get to them. And with the heat gun. And we'll give that a shot. Okay, so now I'm going to do the back side of the blade. What's interesting about the back side of the blade is you have the loom, where the loom attaches right in here, the throat area. That's a little bit of a challenge. As I said before, we have another decal that will go over that. But before I put that one on, I want to put the back of the blade on. As you can see, the indentation here, that will go right over that part. So it's pretty much the same as the front. Begin to peel out. I'll get about halfway through. And if you want, you can put a little fold in it. I found that helps a little bit. And I grab the fold like that. So I'm just putting this right here. Just touching it gently, just ballparking it right now. And then that kind of attaches it. Then I put one hand underneath, and as I pull out, I keep the decal, especially these 2 areas here, from sitting too early on the blade. I've got the indentation here for the loom, but it's basically the same. You're just getting it in there and playing around with it. You see I've got some overlap again here and on the front. All right, so once I've got it sat down, so once it's sitting down here, I'll do the same. I start in the middle, just kind of touch it in the middle, and then gently go out. You see I've got to do a couple adjustments here. And it's a constant little fiddle, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Loom cover sits pretty nice. Areas here to watch for is right up along the shaft. So you really want to make sure that that's in there tight. Don't want any air bubbles in there. That's a place that water could definitely find its way into. So pushing down. We'll do trimming here. We'll get to that in a sec. But get that all nice and pushed down. And you can see it covers pretty well. According to the manufacturers, it doesn't really matter whether you put this on first or last. I've found from having done a bunch of these, I like to put it on last, especially because the color is so different here. And I found if I don't, the color being underneath, the red, if I don't put that on last, that everything's off just a little bit. So I'll show you the final product here in a second. And once I get it all tacked down here, right along the edges, take my knife, my very sharp X-Acto knife, and just trim this up so I can get rid of any of the extras. Being very, very careful with my very sharp X-Acto knife. So now I'm going to take this, heat it with a gun all around, especially the edges, and I'm going to trim up here. You can see a little bit of overlap. Trim that up, seal that and trim it, and then heat it and let her sit. And we have a new colorful oar with the school's colors. So here's a couple things that I've learned from doing these decals, or wraps if you want, the oar wraps. First off, patience. It's taken me, I've done a couple so far, so I think I've done almost a full set. You can see I've got some over there, and those were the red ones, and I've got a whole another set of 8. It takes me about 25 minutes to 30 minutes an oar. So it takes a while. So you have to be patient there. They have to be dry and they have to be warm. And so I've had these inside for a couple days, and so they're nice and dry and warm. I'm not quite sure of a couple things. How long does it take the adhesive to go off? So what I do know is the adhesive is pressure activated and heat activated. So with the pressure and the heat, then the adhesive gets activated. But I'm not sure how long it's going to take for that adhesive to really be 100% stuck on, if you will. And so I'm going to call Regatta Print about that. It's a 3M, I believe, makes these, and it's definitely has marine applications. So I'm sure there's information about that. And another thing I'm not quite sure about is the longevity. We'll see, and how well they stand up to abrasion, rubbing on the dock, that type of stuff. We'll find out about that. What I do know is that the oars don't need to be sanded or prepped in any way beside the alcohol prep. I will say this, you do need to get rid of any flaky paint. So if you just run a quick wire brush over there, if there's an old paint or something like that, and if you have any gaps in the blade, then you're going to need to fill that in or take care of that, because that will be an air gap then between the decal and the blade, and that could cause problems. And the other thing is I'll have an issue with these because I don't know if you can tell, these are Concept 2. The other ones I did were Croakers. These are Concept 2s, and they have the vortex. So I'm going to go right up to the tip of them with the vortex. I'm going to actually leave the vortex tip on and go right up to them and then cut it off there. So it's a little bit different than the Croaker oars I just did that had just a wrap around. There was nothing on the tips. So those are a couple things that I've learned. I've not used these before, so we'll see how well they last on the dock, but I've heard really good reviews about them. All right, Mike, Max Rigging. See you at the finish line.